First of all, thank you. As I've told you in years past, I really enjoy being here. I could talk football, basketball, all their sports, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and my officiating tales, I enjoy those also. So I'll try to keep this short, and hopefully we have some questions. If at any point that I'm going through things and you have a question, please raise your hand and let me know, because I'd rather answer your questions than talk about things that I think maybe are important, but they might not be. So I'm going to start off with, I did come off the field after this past season. That was my 23rd season in the Big Ten, and at my choice, I decided it was time to make the move to come off the field. And people go, well, why would you do that? And there's a lot of reasons. I think the biggest one was that the time commitment that the Big Ten is expecting of their officials has just become more than I cared to give for them. And I understand why they're doing it the way they're doing it. It just gets to be a lot. And when you're my age and you've been through the games and the things that I've been through, I just decided it was time. I love to hunt, and I haven't been hunting for about 3 years because the football season interrupts with hunting. So now I've got, my son is committed that we're going to go hunting this fall quite often, and so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm not so sure. I don't think my wife's very happy about it, because for two reasons. One, she kind of enjoyed it when I left on Friday morning, and then she was sad when I came home on Sunday. I say that kiddingly. But actually, she traveled a lot with me, and especially the last couple years, she's been to probably half the games. So that was fun for us, because the friendships that she's made are as good or better than the friendships that I've made with my fellow officials. So that's been kind of fun for us. I'll talk about the past season. So I kind of had an inkling going into the 2022 season that it was going to be my last one. I had talked to the Big Ten supervisor, and I told him that I thought it was time, and he said, well, I don't know that you're ready for that yet, and you're still in good shape. So he said, we'll kind of plan on it, but let's not make any decisions yet. So just keep it under your belt, and we'll go that way. And we got a month into the season, and then he called me again and said, so what are you thinking? And I said, well, I'm still thinking it's time. And I don't know. You've had, your first 4 games have gone really well. I don't know that you should. And I said, I'm still leaning that way. I just want you to know that. And then a month later, and now we're to the 1st of November, and it's starting to get towards the end of the season. And he called again and said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, it's time. So that was good. It worked out. I was able to kind of plan it out, and so I enjoyed that. My season, I was really lucky. We were talking here with the Van Overbecks. I got to start the season in Dublin. Last season, Nebraska and Northwestern played their first game in Dublin, and so I was selected as the referee on that game. And so we went over for 5 days. My wife and I went over and enjoyed Dublin, and so that's really quite an honor. There was, I'm 7/8 Irish, so in my mind I deserve to get to go to Ireland to work the game. But there's another official in the Big Ten who will claim that he's more Irish than I am, but I'd argue that. But he was actually upset with me because he felt like he should get the game, that he was the Irishman, and he didn't realize I'm Irish. But so anyway, it was a fun honor for me to go over and work that game, and it was a good game, and they treated us really well over there. Both Nebraska and Northwestern had a lot of fans that were there, plus the Ireland people supported it, so it was a full house, and we had a lot of fun there. And as the season went on, some things that I felt were highlights, and to most people this wouldn't have been a highlight, but my second game then, so a week later we get home from Dublin and our season starts, and I had South Dakota State at Iowa. And a lot of people think, well, South Dakota State's a small Division I school, and Iowa's the Big Ten, that's not much of a big deal. But I go back to my days of reffing Division II football, and I reffed a lot of South Dakota State games. So there was some ties to go back there, and actually the Coach Stigemeyer was at South Dakota State when I was working in the league also. So when I went up and introduced myself, because I do, as the referee, I have to meet with each coach before the game. So I went up to him and I shook his hand and I said, "Nice to meet you, coach." And I go, "What? Wait, I need to correct that comment." I said, "It's nice to see you again." And he says, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And I said, "Well, coach, I was in the North Central Conference for 12 years from 1988 to 2000. And I said, "And you were the head coach those last few years of that." And he goes, "Oh, yeah." He said, "I remember you." Whether he really did or not, I don't know. But he's a top-notch guy. And what's more significant there was his team won the national championship this year for that division. And then Coach Stigemeyer also retired. So he and I have a brotherhood. But what's interesting, he's one of those coaches that you don't forget, because instead of the guy that rant and raves and calls you every name in the book, if he thinks you made a mistake or maybe it wasn't the right call and he wants to talk to you, he'll come over and he'll go, "I'll bet you a milkshake that you guys got that one wrong." and then later he'd say, "Well, I guess you got the milkshake, didn't you?" So he was a good guy. So that was a lot of fun. And actually, it was the score of the game was 9-5. When you think about it, we reffed a baseball game, even though it was a football game. But it was interesting. South Dakota State had a really good team, and they battled Iowa all the way to the end. Iowa won, but 9-5. We don't see that score very often. So that game stood out in my mind. And then a couple of weeks after that, I got, to me, this was a big honor. Penn State played at Auburn, and if you follow college football, those are two pretty big programs in the college football world. And Auburn, so the game is at Auburn, and so as the non-conference, it's considered a non-conference game, and as that would go, the officials for that game would be from the Big Ten, because Penn State was the visiting team, so they get to bring their conference officials to the game. So I was selected to go to Auburn, and so that was my one and only time that I've reffed in an SEC stadium. And I will tell you that, you go around the Big Ten, and there are some crazy fans and some wonderful game day stuff that happens, and we don't hold a candle to what they did at Auburn. I mean, I'm going to tell you that a 15-mile radius around that stadium was totally orange and blue, and every yard was packed with people partying before the game. We go into the stadium 3 hours before the game, and the yards were packed, the streets were packed, and we get this police escort, and we're going 80 miles an hour down side streets. I mean, it's crazy, but that's how they do it down there. I mean, SEC football the Big Ten is good. The SEC takes it to another level, and so that was interesting. And even when Penn State won the game, and it got kind of towards the end, they were up like 2 or 3 touchdowns. So the game was kind of getting over with, but the fans still were there cheering and booing and everything that they do. And they still, as soon as the game's over, they loaded us up into a van, and 80 miles an hour down the streets we go to get us out of there. So that was a fun experience. And then the rest of my schedule was pretty much a normal, what I would say is a normal Big Ten schedule. We had conference games for the rest of the season, but then it got to the last game, and when the boss had agreed that, okay, this was going to be my last season, he said, "Well, do you have a request for the last week?" And I can tell you, when he asks other officials that, almost every time they're going to say, "Well, I want the Ohio State-Michigan game," right? That's always the last week, and it's typically for the conference championship, and it's kind of a big deal. And I've reffed that game 4 times, and it's great. It's a lot of fun and a great atmosphere. But it's Thanksgiving weekend, and it's hard to get to Columbus, Ohio at that point, and the travel expense is pretty high, and that all comes out of our paycheck. So, and I wanted family members to be able to see my last game. So I said, Bill, I said, Minnesota's playing at Wisconsin. I said that would be the closest game that would be on the schedule. So my preference would be to have that game, because I could drive and family members could ride along with me if it worked out. So that was my preference. He goes, well, that's good because that's the game I had you penciled in for. So, so that worked out well, and it was fun. So as it turns out, my son and my grandson, who's 3 years old, and my wife went along with me. They were the only family members that could make it, but we had the time of our life that weekend, and so it was a great memory for me. But it was interesting before the game. Like I said before, I meet with each coach, and so I met with the Wisconsin coach first, and Jim Leonard. He was an interim coach at the time, and he's a great guy. And so that meeting went well. Well, then my next meeting is going to be with Coach Fleck, and I, people have asked, and I think the world of Coach Fleck. I really do think he does a great job there, and I think he's a really good coach. And so anyway, I go in and have my meeting with Coach Fleck, and I don't say anything about this being my last game. I don't need that. I don't need anybody to know that. And so we have our meeting. It goes well, and I walk out, and they all have a guy called the football operations guy. So the football operations guy at the U was in the locker room, and he and I have gotten to know each other pretty well. And as I'm walking out, he goes, "So is the rumor true?" And I said, "Well, what rumor are you talking about, Daniel?" And he said, "So this is your last game?" And I said, "Yeah, it is. That's time." "Oh man, that's too bad." He said, "I've really enjoyed our relationship, so hopefully we can still stay connected." And I said, "Well, that's great. That's fine." So that's over with. So now we go out in the field, and we have to be out in the field 90 minutes before the game. And when it's 70 and sunny, that's okay. When it's 30 and rainy and windy and all that, it's not a lot of fun. But we stand out there because the teams can't behave. That's basically, it's one of my pet peeves with why can't the coaches make their players behave before the game? But it's our job to stand out there and babysit, as I say. So we're standing out there, and Coach Fleck walks up to me, and he said, "You didn't tell me this was your last game." And I said, "No, Coach, whatever." He gave me a big hug, and I'm sitting there going, "Okay, this doesn't look good." And but he was very complimentary. He was, he gave me some nice kudos, and that was kind of fun. But what was more fun was about 5 minutes into the game, and Coach Fleck feels like we didn't make the right call on something, and he calls me over, and this is our conversation, and this is probably the good part of it. He got quite a bit more animated as the conversation went on, and I've kind of got this smirk on my face the whole time because I wanted to say, "Coach, about 5 minutes ago you told me how good I was," and so that's one of my mementos, and I do actually, I'm going to go down to the U in a few weeks, and I hope to have him autograph that because that's kind of neat. And I liken it to this one. So these are the only two things that I brought, but you remember Coach Jerry Kill, right? And I really thought the world of Jerry Kill also. But this was a game that I had at Minnesota, and Coach Kill there was a play where there was a fumble, and I think they were playing Purdue, if I remember right. Purdue fumbles, Minnesota recovers, and they start to run it back, and we blow it dead, and one of the guys comes in and he said, "No, he was down before the fumble, and so it's going to go to replay." Well, this was early on in replay. This was about 7 or 8 years ago, and in those times, the referee didn't get to go over to a monitor and look at the replay. I just stood in the middle of the field, and I had a earpiece on, and the replay guy said, "Mike, no, it's right or it's wrong or whatever, and here's what you go." And so I don't get a chance to see what's going on. Now they're playing a replay up on the scoreboard at the U Stadium as this is going on, but we've been instructed not to watch that. So I'm sitting there, and Kill's pointing up to the screen. And the thing is about it, though, and which is not a surprise, is he was wrong. So he's sitting there and he's letting me have it because now I make the announcement that no, the call on the field is correct. The runner was down, and so it's still Purdue football, and so Kill's going bananas on me. And as it turns out, after the game's over, now I get a chance to look at the play, and not only was the kid down, but a Minnesota kid committed a targeting foul on the play that we should have called. So And now as the replay has changed, now as a referee over the last 5 years or so, I actually go to a monitor and I watch the play and I help make the decision as to whether we've got it right or wrong or whatever. And we also can create targeting fouls. So in today's world, not only would Coach Kill have been wrong and it would have been Purdue's ball, but we would have tacked on a 15-yard penalty against Minnesota and we'd have thrown the kid out of the game. So the next time I see Coach Kill, I'm going to remind him about that. But so anyway, that was my season. Then as I've had the good fortune for a lot of years, I was selected to work one more game. I got to work the Gator Bowl. And the Gator Bowl's in Jacksonville, so I can tell you that going to Jacksonville, Florida, the last week of December isn't a bad place to go. A lot worse places than that. So we were fortunate, my wife and I and both of our daughters and our two son-in-laws went to that game, so that was good. My son got to go to my last Big Ten game and my daughters got to go to my last bowl game. And so we spent 4 days down in Jacksonville and just had a blast. And the Big Ten, when they select their bowl crews, they do it by position, not by crew. So, I was not with the guys that I was with all season long. I was with a select group of officials. And for me, it was pretty neat because 3 of the guys that were selected for that game were guys that I had reffed the national championship with a few years before that, but they haven't been on my crew since then. So I hadn't worked games with them since then. So it was kind of cool that we got to finish my career on the field with some guys that have been really close friends for a long time. So we really enjoyed that, and I won't forget the Gator Bowl for a long time. Now, who played in the Gator Bowl? The Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
I asked my son how you did.
Yeah.
And I said, well, there was 2 that I didn't.
Yeah, just 2? Heck, then I think we won. It's kind of my story. So, being an Irish and Catholic, I'm a Notre Dame fan also. Although my love for Notre Dame died about, oh golly, how old's Kylie? 38? 20 years ago. My oldest daughter wanted to go to Notre Dame, and she was not accepted. So our love for Notre Dame kind of went away at that point. Although my dad in heaven is still a diehard Irish fan. So I know that it was pretty cool. I have 4 older sisters. I'm the youngest little. I'm the one that got beat up for all my life, and my 4 oldest sisters all said, "Wow, that's pretty cool that you finished with Notre Dame. You know that Mom and Dad would be smiling." So that was neat. I get emotional when I do that. But so anyway, talk just a little bit about my career because it's over. So I, as I said, 23 years in the Big Ten. Before that, I worked for 20 years, what I say, toiling in the lower levels, starting in junior high and high school, and then worked my way up to Division II and Division III and then Division II, and then finally got into the Big Ten. I had the really good fortune to work 4 national championship games. One of those was at Division II level, and I can remember, that was in 1994, and I remember when we got the phone call that said, you're going to go to Florence, Alabama, to ref the Division II national championship game. And I thought I'd made everything that you could ever want. That was a huge assignment for me. And to think that then that would lead on to 3 more national championship games I've been truly blessed. A lot of people say, well, don't you wish you would have gotten into the NFL? And there's a couple reasons why I wouldn't have mind going to the NFL, mostly financial. But there's no way that I could have ever achieved the success I had if I had gone to the NFL. So no, I wouldn't trade my Big Ten and college career for anything from that standpoint. I reffed. I added a 22 bowl games / championship games. So pretty much one almost every year. And those are selections. Those are made based on performance. So I'd like to say I must have done my job. I've been pretty lucky. I wore this today. I don't wear this around, but people say, what did you get for working a national championship game? Well, after every one of them, we had to pay for them, but we bought rings. We had rings made, and so that was my last national championship game. Otherwise we got a watch for every bowl game that we refed in. That's the official's gift for working a bowl game. So I have a whole bunch of watches that are sitting in my bedroom, and the batteries all die. And for a while, I was buying batteries to keep them going. And I finally got to the point, this makes no sense. I can't wear them all, and I don't look at them all. So why should I be putting batteries in them all the time? So I keep batteries in about 3 or 4 of them, and I rotate those through. Those are kind of some of the mementos I have of my career. Yeah, Ron, jump in.
Are they Rolex?
Are they Rolex? No, none of them are Rolex. Believe me, they're nowhere near Rolex. God, what else? I want to answer questions because I prefer to do that,
Yeah.
James.
When you look back at your career, is there one game or one call that you regret in hindsight? That
Oh
really
boy.
sticks out?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, there's more than one I regret, but I'll tell you one of the biggest ones was, and this was when I was still a field judge, but we had Ohio State at Penn State, and this was quite a few years ago, and neither team was very good that time, which is unusual now because they're both pretty powerful now. But and it was before we had instant replay. And late in the game, Ohio State was marching down to score what would be the winning touchdown, and they threw a pass that the receiver eventually dropped, and we didn't see him drop it. So the ball hits the ground, bounces back up into his hands as he's flailing on the ground, and we call it a catch, gives them a first down, and they go in and they score a touchdown, and they win the game. And the Pens, they like they always do, they played that up on the scoreboard numerous times than the last couple minutes of the game. And so the Penn State fans, and Penn State, there's 110,000 people there, and they're rabid fans, and they are starting to boo, and they're starting to. And so we're not really 100% sure what they're mad about, but we have an idea that something must have happened in that drive that caused them to be so mad. So when the game was over, we had a hard time getting off the field. Some fans came on, and I'm not sure why they let fans on the field because they typically don't. They're usually really good about that. But there's a tunnel that we have to go off of at Penn State, and it's at the opposite end of the stadium. So we're at one end, we got to run 100 and some yards down to the other end to go through this tunnel. Well, by the time we got there, the fans around the tunnel are starting to throw stuff. And so we're getting bombarded, and we're running like this, kind of trying to protect ourselves, and one of the guys got hit in the head with a water bottle. That was one of those where you go, wow. If we had instant replay today, we would have corrected that incomplete pass. We'd have made it an incomplete pass, and the outcome of the game might have changed. So I'm a big supporter of replay because we don't want things like that to happen. We want the game. We want the right team to win. We want it to be fair. So that's one I can think of.
Excluding Gopher coaches, is there one Big Ten coach that you particularly have gained a lot of appreciation for or respect for, and one also that you have very little respect for?
So there are reasons. One, that I'm still hopefully employed by the Big Ten Conference, so I have to be careful how I answer that question because those are the kinds of things they don't like us to talk about, and rightfully so. I agree with that. But so I'll go the positive route. So first of all, I'm going to tell you that the coaches they make a lot of money, right? They make way too much money, but that's sports. They don't get to the level they're at because they're bad people or not good coaches, whatever. They're good people, they're good coaches. That's why they got where they're at. The pressure that they're under is tremendous. And now we've talked about the transfer portal and all this stuff. It's made their jobs even more difficult. So I empathize with them in regards to that. But one who probably stands out in my mind is the coach at Iowa, Kirk Ferentz. And he's the only coach that was in the Big Ten the whole time I was there. He actually started at Iowa 1 year before I got into the Big Ten. So he just finished his 24th season. And he just he's really a class act. And in fact, I just last week, I got a card from him. And it was handwritten, and it was very, very complimentary. And he's the only coach I've heard from, and I don't expect to hear from the coaches. That's most of them wouldn't know who Mike Cannon is, and that's fine too, but that was pretty classy of him to do that. And on the other spectrum, there's a lot of coaches that used to scream and holler and say things, and you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. And that's one of the things I'm going to miss, truthfully, because it was a challenge for me. I wanted that challenge to, hey, coach, you maybe don't like me, or you think we screwed this up or whatever, but I'm going to convince you that we're doing the right thing out here, and we're doing our very best, and we're not out here to give it to your team. So I'll miss that. But there were a lot of screamers. Lloyd Carr, I go back to Michigan when I first started. Lloyd Carr was on the sideline, and he would yell at me for 3 hours, but he would also be the first guy to shake your hand or something when the game was over, or smile at you. And I remember my first game at Michigan after Coach Carr was gone, and when the game was over, I said to one of the other guys, I said, you know what? I miss Lloyd Carr. I miss that 3 hours of him just letting me have it. So that's good.
I'm John Bryan. I introduced myself before, but I take a particular interest in South Dakota State football because I was co-captain in 1968.
Oh, wow.
So that's 55 years ago, and we're going to have a 55-year reunion here coming up this fall. Anyway, I want to refresh your memory about that South Dakota State-Iowa game. The score was 7-3. 7-3, and not a touchdown was scored.
Yeah, you're right. I said 9. It was 7. You're right.
The reason that the score was 7 is that Iowa scored 2 safeties.
Yes.
How many games did you officiate in which there were 2 safeties?
I don't know for sure, but it might be the only one. Yeah, I mean, we just hardly ever had a safety. So yeah, that was what was crazy about that.
Yeah. 2 safeties and a field goal, 7, and South Dakota State had a field goal.
Yeah.
7-3.
Any other questions? Yes, Renee.
When you were saying you were roughing a lesser class before you got to the Big Ten, were you selected to the Big Ten, or did you apply to go to the Big Ten, or how do you move from one?
Yeah, it's quite a process, and it was a bigger process when I was younger. But you apply and then get selected. They observe. In fact, one of my jobs is going to be, I hope, to observe younger officials and recommend them to be moved up the ladder. So that's how it worked for me. I was 12 years in Division II, and I had applied to the Big Ten, and about 4 or 5 years later, I got 1 game in the Big Ten, and then 2 years after that, I was selected to go onto the Big Ten staff. So, it's a process to move up the ladder. Gary.
Did you go through a review process?
Yeah, we go through so Gary asked about a review process. Every play of every game in the Big Ten is reviewed by somebody who evaluates whether we made the right call. And most of the plays there's nothing, so there's nothing they have to really look at. But I would say there's anywhere from 20 to 100 plays per game where they want us to go back and look at, and did you do this right? Could you have been in a better position? We get what we call downgrades if they feel like we made the wrong call or we were in the wrong position. We'll get graded on that, and so throughout the course of the season, we're all graded every game, every play. So it's a big process, and it's a lot. Yeah.
What would you change about the instant replay? And why do they always call instant replays? And what determines to call it instant replay?
Well, there's a lot of guidelines for instant replay, and like I said, I love instant replay. I think we've taken it too far, and I say that because they want us to be perfect. And the game isn't played perfectly, right? Everybody makes mistakes. The coaches, the players, the officials. We all make mistakes. We don't want to make mistakes that cost any team the game. Those are the kinds of things I wish we'd use replay for to get to correct. But we've taken it to where they'll slow it down and then magnify, and the foot, is there one blade of green grass between the foot and the sideline or whatever? And obviously it's impossible for us to see that on the field, but our percentage of getting them right is 99% or better. So the officials are pretty good, and the game is really fast. But I would just like, in my opinion, there's just some things where we're trying to get perfect, and we don't need to get them perfect. If you can't instantly make that change in the decision, we're limited to, we're supposed to get it done in 2 minutes. And I think it should be even less than that, you know? If in a minute we can't say, you know what, they were wrong or whatever, then let's just move on.
Well, Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.